everyone,
so
welcome
you're
back for
back with
another
us
deep
for
dive.
another deep dive.
It's really
Glad to
amazing
have you
the
here.
stuff you
And
guys send
today,
in. This time, a
we're
lot of
gonna
it
be
has
tackling
this
something,
thread
well,
of
let's just say it's
resilience
pretty
running
intense, but
through it.
hopefully,
How do
we
we
can make
how do
it
we hold on to our
interesting.
strength?
We're
When
diving
things get
into
tough.
George
And a lot of what
Orwell's
you sent actually
1984.
focused on
this
MLK,
was a classic,
Martin
right?
Luther King
But
Jr. and his
also
approach
kind of
to
a tough read
nonviolent
sometimes.
resistance. I
I
thought
mean,
maybe that's a good place to
dystopian
start
stuff
today.
can
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
heavy,
looking at
you
everything
know?
you've gathered here,
absolutely.
there's so
And
much
honestly,
to unpack.
sometimes
it
feels a
real
little
heart of it is this
too
question.
real, maybe.
How can
I
people,
get that,
how can
but that's
anyone
kind of why we're
really
here to
hold on to
break
their
down some of
dignity?
these
And even more than
big,
that,
heavy
how do you
ideas
actually become
and see how
someone
they
who
connect
makes
to
change happen? And not
how
just
they
any
work in
change,
the
but
book
change
himself,
through
you know?
nonviolent
Exactly.
means.
Right, and
So we're calling this one
that's what
truth
we're
in
going to try and figure out today. Like,
which
what are
I don't
those
know about
key
you, but to me
insights
that
from all
sounds
these different
kinda
sources you sent?
terrifying.
The kind of
Yeah,
stuff
it's
that
not
makes
exactly
you go,
lighthearted, is
aha.
it? But hey,
That's
that's
it.
Orwell for
So
you.
one of the things that
Dude
really
did not
jumped out
shy
at
away
me
from
was
the
this
dark stuff.
No,
whole
he did
idea
not.
of dignity,
Okay, so for starters,
especially
let's
when you're
talk
being
about
oppressed.
memory, like
And
how it works in the
King,
book,
in his
how the
letter from
party
Birmingham
uses
jail,
it.
Right. Because it's not just about the
He
present.
doesn't
is it?
shy away from that at all.
In 1984,
he
the
talks
party,
about how oppression
they're
can just
obsessed
crush
with
people,
controlling the past,
how they can end up
too.
losing their
Like they're
self-respect,
constantly rewriting
almost
history,
getting used to the
making up
injustice.
news,
You
the
know,
whole
what I
9
find really
yards.
powerful about
and it's
how
not
King
just like a
approaches
little
this
tweak
is that
here and there.
he
It's
doesn't
like they're
stop there.
literally
He goes on to talk about
reshaping
this
reality.
really
No, totally. And they're
natural
super
reaction,
methodical
you know,
about
the
it.
bitterness,
Think about
the
Winston.
hatred.
Right.
But he shows how
His
that can
whole
actually
job at
be
the Ministry of
self-defeating in
Truth,
the long run.
it's literally to
And
fabricate
that's where
the
he
past.
introduces
Like,
this
stuff
concept of
disappears down the
nonviolent
memory hole.
resistance.
People become
And it's not just a
unpersons,
tactic,
poof,
it's a
gone.
choice.
It's
like a
crazy, and they're
fundamental
not
choice.
even
He calls
hiding it, really.
a
It's
more
like they want you to
excellent way.
know
A way
they
that comes
can do it,
from
that
love,
they have that
from
power.
protest,
Yeah, it's about
from
control.
holding on to your
Yeah.
Right,
humanity,
like if you can
even when
control the
everyone around
past,
you is trying to
you
take
control
it
the
away.
present.
It's almost
too.
like you can
And
take
make sure
everything
there's no
else,
way to challenge
but you can't
your
take my
version of
dignity.
things.
And
And
That's
it's interesting because
I
this
mean, that's
ties in
chilling.
with
And then,
something
of
I
course,
saw in
there's
that mindfulness
newspeak.
piece
And I
you
think
sent.
this is where it starts to
It talked
feel
about,
really, really
how we can
creepy.
be so
Because it's
unaware
not
of those
just about
automatic
simplifying
reactions we
language,
have,
it's about,
especially when
well,
we're
it's about
angry.
controlling
And
thought
I started
itself,
thinking, well,
right?
exactly. Like
In a
Orwell's
way,
idea is
nonviolent
if you get rid of the
resistance is about
words
being
for
really
certain
aware.
ideas,
Yeah.
you
Right.
get rid of the
It's
ideas
about choosing
themselves.
not to
So,
let
like,
those
if you get rid of the word
destructive impulses
freedom,
control you.
People
Yeah,
can't
it's
even
about
think
taking a
about
different
freedom
path.
anymore.
One
That's
that
the
keeps your
idea, yeah.
spirit intact,
And it's
your
not
inner
just freedom,
integrity.
right? It's
And I
any
think that's
concept
crucial
that the
because it
party
shows
sees
us
as
that nonviolence
dangerous.
isn't
They
passive.
narrow down the
It
language,
actually takes a
limit
tremendous
what you
amount of
can
inner
express,
strength
and in
and
doing
self-awareness.
so, they limit
Because,
what you can even
you know, when you think
think.
about it, it's about
just wild.
refusing
It's
to
like-
let the oppressor dictate the
it's like they're
terms,
trying
not
to
just
shrink your
externally, but
brain, you
internally
know?
as well.
Make it
And
impossible to
you know,
think
there's this
outside their
other
little
piece,
box.
living
Yeah,
beyond
that's a
your
good way
life
to put
today.
it. And the thing
And it
is,
has
you know,
this
even
really
though
deep
Newspeak is this
idea
extreme
that
fictional
what
example,
makes us
it does make
truly
you think
human
about
is
how
our ability to
language
help others,
shapes our
to kind of
thoughts
go
in
beyond
general,
our own
right?
immediate
Like
needs.
the words we
right?
have, the way we
And it
structure our
even
sentences,
suggests that
it
sometimes
all
our fear of
influences how
death,
we see
it
the
holds
world.
us back
It's
from doing
scary
that.
to
But then
think about, you know?
you think about nonviolent
Like how
resistance
much
and
of
the
what
courage
we
it takes.
believe, what we
Often when
think
you're facing
is
real
shaped by
danger,
the language
it's
we
like this
use.
incredible act of going
Okay, so
beyond
we've
that
talked
fear
about
for something
memory, we've
bigger
talked
than
about
yourself.
newspeak.
Yeah,
Now
exactly.
we got to talk
and that
about
willingness
doublethink.
to actually face
And I'll admit,
harm
this one is a
because
bit of
you're
a head
committed to
scratcher for me.
justice, to the
It's a trip,
well-being of
for sure.
others.
It's like,
It really
think of it
shows
as the
how
mental
deep our
gymnastics of
capacity is
believing
for
two
altruism,
totally
for
opposite
taking a
things at the
stand
same
for
time.
what's right. You know, it's
And
about
not just
acting in
pretending
line
to
with
believe
something much
them, like
bigger than
actually
yourself,
believing
even
them.
when
Exactly.
your own
And it's
safety
not
is
like,
on the
you
line.
know,
Yeah.
being hypocritical
So we've
or
been talking about this
lying.
kind of
It's more
internal
like this weird side of things,
mental
but
state where you
you
can
also
just
send stuff
accept contradictions
that looks at
without freaking
nonviolent
out.
resistance
Yeah.
as
And
a
the
way
party
to
uses this, like,
actually achieve change,
big
on a
But
practical
how?
level.
Like, give me an example
And
of what
in The
this
Struggle
actually
Is
looks
My
like in the
Life,
book.
We'll look
King
at
is
those
super
party
direct
slogans,
about
right?
this. He
War
calls
is
nonviolence
peace,
the only
freedom is
weapon that
slavery,
would
ignorance is
destroy
strength. I mean,
apartheid.
those are like
And
textbook
he's
doublethink
really
right
clear
there.
that we need to be
Totally
prepared to use it
contradictory,
strategically.
yet people
So
in the party,
then
they're
the question
expected to
becomes,
accept them
how
as
do we
absolute
analyze
truth.
this
It's mind-blowing. And the thing is, they don't
you know,
even
that
question
excerpt
it,
from
right?
Gramsci,
Right.
he talks about these different stages
And the
of
scariest
political
part,
struggle. You
Winston,
have
the
the
main
war of
character,
maneuver,
he eventually
which
gets
is
to
like
the
those
point where he
initial,
genuinely believes
more,
that 2 + 2
spontaneous
equals 5.
confrontations,
It's
protests.
not just about him
And then you have
saying
this
it.
longer
He's
term
been so
war of
thoroughly
position.
brainwashed
Think of it like
that he actually
a
believes
sustained
it.
effort
It shows
to
you
build
the
power
power
and
of
actually
doublethink,
change the
how it
underlying
can
structures
literally
of
warp
society.
your sense of reality.
And you could
It's a
argue
bit
that
much, isn't
nonviolent
it?
resistance,
Makes your
especially
head
against
spin a
something as
little.
entrenched as
So,
apartheid, it works
we see
like
how
that,
the
like a
party
long-term
controlled
war
information,
position.
how they manipulate
It's
language
constantly
and thought,
chipping
how
away
they
at
make
the
people
oppressor's
accept
power
contradictions
through
but,
persistent principle action
doesn't anyone
and through
resist?
mobilizing
Well, that's where
public
Winston
opinion.
comes in, right?
That makes a lot
He's
of
like
sense. It's not
the
just about a single
embodiment of
moment.
this
It's about a
individual
whole struggle
campaign.
against
Exactly.
this massive,
But
all-powerful
then
system. He starts
we see in
small,
some of the sources
keeping a
that,
diary, having a
working with
forbidden
Birmingham,
relationship. Some people saw
but
it
at the
as
core of it,
extreme. It's
Right,
about
and
him
this gets
trying
to the
hold
heart
onto
of
some
what it
truth,
takes
some
to create real
shred
change.
of individual
King
identity.
actually addresses this
well, I don't know how
directly
that
in
ends,
his
right?
letter.
Yeah,
He
it's
basically
not
says,
exactly a
look,
happy
when you're
ending.
facing something
Winston
that's
gets
so
broken
fundamentally
completely.
unjust,
He's
so
tortured,
morally
re-educated
wrong,
until he
what
loves
might
Big
seem
Brother.
extreme from one
It's Orwell's
perspective
way of
is
showing just
actually
how powerful,
not only
how
justified, but
completely
it's the right
crushing a
thing to do. He's
totalitarian
saying
regime
you
can be.
can't just
So
passively
basically,
wait for
resistance is
justice
futile.
when it's constantly being denied. You have
complicated.
to act.
Right.
Because even though Winston
and
fails,
all of this,
his struggle,
it
even
makes you
his
think,
brief
okay,
moments of
what do you
rebellion,
need inside
they show that
yourself
there's this deep
to
human
actually
need for
sustain
truth
that
and
kind of
freedom,
struggle? Because it
even
can
in
go
the
on
face
for
of
so
overwhelming
long,
oppression.
and it could be so
And that's something we're
intense.
thinking
Absolutely.
about, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
one of the things that
And
came
that
up
brings
was
us to the big
emotional
question.
intelligence.
Why are we still talking
Specifically,
about
the
this book?
ability
I mean,
to
it was written
understand
decades
and
ago. It's
manage
about a
your own
fictional
emotions.
dystopia. So why does
And
it
that seems
still
so
feel
crucial,
so relevant?
especially when you're dealing
Because
with
the
violence
themes
and
it
hatred.
tackles
Yeah,
control of
because think about it.
information,
To
manipulation
stay
of
nonviolent
language,
when you're
the
literally being
dangers
met
of
with
unquestioning
aggression, with
obedience.
brutality,
These are all things
that
that we
takes
see happening in the
immense
world
self-discipline.
to varying
And that's where
degrees even
mindfulness
today.
comes in. That
It's a
excerpt you
warning,
sent, it talks
but
about
it's
how
also a call to
mindfulness is about
action.
staying
It
aware of
reminds
what's
us to
truly
be
important,
critical,
so you
to
don't lose
question
sight of it,
everything,
even when
and to
things
fight
get
for our
heated.
own understanding
So
of
for
truth.
someone who's
Absolutely.
practicing
And to remember
nonviolent
that, as
resistance,
much
that
as
commitment
1984 is this
to
dystopian
nonviolence,
nightmare,
to
it's
love,
also
to
a work of
justice,
fiction.
it has
It's
to
a
stay
way
at
for
the
us
center.
to
It
explore
has to
these
guide
ideas,
their
to think
actions
critically
even
about
when
them
they're feeling
without
fear
necessarily
or anger.
drawing direct
It's about staying
parallels
true to your
current
values.
events.
Exactly.
Even
it's about
when the
the
world
ideas,
around you is
right? It's a
pushing you in a
springboard for
totally
discussion,
different
for
direction.
debate, for questioning,
And
and
you know,
that's what makes it
this
so
actually connects
powerful,
with
so
something else you
enduring.
sent, that excerpt
So
from the
we've
Four
taken a
Noble
deep
Truths.
dive into
It talks about
1984,
dukkha,
exploring its chilling
suffering.
vision of
And the
truth
main
and
point there is to
erasure.
see
We've
suffering not
seen
just
how
as
the
your
party
own personal
manipulates
misery,
memory,
but as something
language,
that's
and even
part of
thought
being
itself
human.
to
And
maintain
if we
absolute
apply that to
control.
nonviolent
And it's a lot to
resistance, I
process,
think it
I
can be really
know.
powerful
But what's
because
important
if you
is
can
that we
see
don't shy
suffering as
away
this
from these
shared human
ideas. We think
experience,
about them,
it can help
we
you
question
cultivate
them,
empathy
and
and
we use them to
solidarity.
inform
It
our
might
own
even give you a way
understanding
to
of the
endure
world around
hardship
us.
without
And
becoming
on that
bitter
note,
and
here's a
wanting
final thought for you
revenge.
to chew on.
And then there's this idea
In
of
a world where
humility as a source
information
of
is
strength.
everywhere and
That
narratives
piece
are
from De
constantly
Profundis
competing, how can
explores
we
this
as
and suggests
individuals
that, when
cultivate
you're
a sense of
facing
truth?
suffering,
How do
if
we
you
know what
approach
to
it with
believe?
humility,
And what happens when
rather
our own
than
memories, our
rage
own
or a
understanding
need
of
for
history
revenge,
become
it
contested
can
or
actually lead to
controlled?
inner
Something to
power
think
and
about.
personal growth.
And
what's
as
so
always, thank you for
interesting is
joining
that
us
it
for
seems
another deep dive.
counterintuitive, right? When you're being oppressed, when your very worth is being denied, embracing humility almost feels like giving in. But the text argues that it's actually this deep form of inner resistance. It's like saying, I refuse to be defined by your terms. I have my own inherent dignity.
And, another big theme that came up was the importance of community, of not struggling alone. In Long Walk to Freedom, there's this powerful description of the Defiance Campaign. Thousands of people deliberately breaking unjust laws, going to jail together, singing, "We want to enter." Such a strong image of collective action.
Yeah, that sense of shared purpose, of being in it together, it's crucial. You can contrast that with the isolation you see in 1984. Any kind of rebellion is crushed into these tiny individual acts. But when you have strength in numbers, when you're all committed to the same goal, it gives you so much more power, and it provides this vital support system that helps people stay resilient.
And Key himself talks about this in his letter, about the role of the Negro Church in the Civil Rights Movement, how it provided this space for people to come together to find strength and to organize.
Exactly, and thinking about how communities form around resistance. That mention of the Common Ground Project in Bridgebook is a great example. It shows how you can use creative means, like art, to bring people together who might not normally be involved in activism. It's a reminder that there are so many ways to build solidarity and work towards a common goal.
And finally, there's this really important thread running through all of this. The idea of small acts, of finding peace within yourself, even when you're in the middle of a struggle. That mood you described, the small creative acts, community, and simple joys, it really captures this idea of finding strength and hope even in the smallest things.
Yeah. It's a reminder that holding on to your dignity and resilience, it's not just about these big, grand gestures. It's also about those everyday moments that nourish your spirit. Like in Beloved, where just the sight of a few yellow flowers and some myrtle can bring a sense of calm, even in the midst of deep pain.
And that excerpt from Peace is Every Step, it reinforces this idea. Peace isn't some far-off destination. It's something you can find right now in the present moment, no matter what's going on around you.
Exactly. And then there's that practical advice in how important is meditation. Just start with a few minutes of meditation each day. It shows you that you don't need to do something huge to find peace and build resilience. You can start small and build from there.
So as we come to the end of this deep dive, let's recap some of the key takeaways. We've seen how important it is to make conscious choices that preserve your self-respect. That's a fundamental act of resistance in itself. We've explored the power of nonviolent action as a way to create real change. And we've looked at the role of things like mindfulness and emotional intelligence in staying strong, and how crucial community and even those small moments of peace and beauty can be.
So here's a final thought for you to take with you. How can these ideas of dignity and nonviolent resistance, ideas that were so powerfully embodied by MLK and that we've seen reflected in all these different sources,
how can they guide you in your own life? How can you use them to face the challenges and injustices you see in the world around you? What small creative acts can you do to find inner peace and create positive change, even in your own little corner of the world?
It's a journey, and it's ongoing, right? So we hope this deep dive is giving you some food for thought, something to keep exploring. And thanks for joining us as always. We'll catch you next time.